Hola, hola. Welcome everybody to season 3 of the Chicago Techies podcast, a podcast focused on highlighting the voices of Chicago techies and their experiences. This season, we'll be hearing from seasoned entrepreneurs to rising stars making their mark. We'll dive into their triumphs, their challenges, and all their unique experiences that have shaped their journeys. I'm Ceci Fischer-Benitez. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Loren. Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Chicago Techies podcast. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's a Tuesday afternoon. Can't complain.
It's a Tuesday afternoon. And actually, funny enough, this episode airs tomorrow.
Oh, not a Tuesday afternoon.
So crazy. Because we already talked about this. My vacation schedule was a little messed up, but starting next week, I'll definitely be ahead of the podcast. But I'm excited that people are kind of getting like a live insights.
Sure.
But anyway, why don't you introduce yourself? Like, your name, your pronouns, where you and your family are originally from, or just you, and your current role.
Okay, sure. My name is Loren Velazquez, and my pronouns are EA, she, they. I'm from Chicago. Like, I was born in Chicago, but between like 10 and 20 years old, me and my family were out in the burbs, but I commuted still to the city. So I'm always like, I feel like burbs kind of live there, but I consider myself a Chicagoan.
Nice.
But my parents, my dad is from Colombia, my mom is from El Salvador. So I was like raised in like an immigrant household, so we moved around until we got like, they were able to like get, a house, like buy a house, and that's where we ended up. So
yeah, you got that Latin sazon that we all have, right? But so did you grow up? So you grew up here then, and so what was that experience like growing up with immigrant parents? I wonder if it was similar because I moved here when I was 11, but I guess I want to hear your perspective growing up here and kind of. I'm assuming growing up low income from what I know about you. Walk me through your like early days right before high school.
Yeah, so I was born in like the Ravenswood, Lincoln Square area, like born at like Ravenswood Hospital, which doesn't exist anymore. And it was basically like we lived in, I guess I don't have memories from like before my brother was born. He was born like when I was like 6 or so. I remember like my parents were separated because at the time they would fight a lot. So it was like I would spend like a weekend with one parent and then a weekend with another parent. And then I don't know what happened. All of a sudden my brother, like they were pregnant. So they got together again, I guess. And then that's like when I remember like more of like, oh, we lived in like a one bedroom, or like I think we lived in like a studio, or we lived in like we co-own or rented with like another family, where one family was in the bedroom and the other family was in the living room or something like that. And like before that, like I was used to like my mom having like roommates, and just kind of like, like we would like, it was the same kind of concept. Like one person would have like living room, one person would have like the other family would have the bedroom. So I feel like I grew up in that. And then when I was 10, they had raised up enough money for at least a down payment, and we moved out to the suburbs when I was like 10. So at first I was here at St. Matthias, like as like a grade schooler, and then transitioned to public school over there in Melrose Park. Then for high school, went back to the city, to Resurrection High School, which was an all-girls school, which was the reaction of like my sister being a teen mom. And so it's like, let's make sure that you're away from all the guys and grow up a little awkward. But it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm like necessarily straight. So did that work? I mean, whatever. So yeah.
Love it. Now, once you settled into high school, let's start. I'm assuming that's when you really kind of start thinking about, oh shit, college is coming next. What do I want to do? What were your career interests, I guess, early on in high school that you thought you might want to go in for undergrad?
Yeah, my earliest recollection of this is what I want to do for the rest of my life was sophomore year, where we were learning like biology, like genetics, like Punnett squares, and big B, little b kind of like stuff. And then we were also in English class like reading about Frankenstein, and I was like, ooh, I want to be a scientist. I want to like do this like wild stuff and just like be in that space. So that was what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to cure cancer one day. Like I want to do whatever, biochem. That sounds fun. For college, I went to Loyola University, Chicago. So I knew that I was going to have to stay in the city. I was going to have to commute. So just that was like what it was. Because even though my parents like, traveled so many miles, are in a different country, they would guilt me about like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you want to leave? So I was like, all right, I guess Chicago it is.
What was biology your major?
So my major was bioinformatics, which is biochem, computer science, statistics, like all in one. And then I was like double majoring in molecular biology to kind of like get that that I don't know, that like full rounded like, ooh, I could be a scientist one day.
More like you're like a genius then.
I don't know if I'm a genius. C's get degrees. Like that's the truth.
I love that. Well, walk me through your college experience. Quick. Like, what did Loren want to do in those 4 years?
Yeah. So when I joined, I was actually first on a probation there because although I had like good grades, like GPA, my ACT score was like a 22 and they really required like a 24. So I had to be on probation for the first 2 years where like I had to have like a certain GPA and whatever. And so that was stressful. I feel like it was stressful. And also like my first year, that was like the year that I got like the lowest grades because I was just like used to high school where like I didn't have to study all that much. And then here it was like, oh shit, I really have to know my material, And so that was hard. I made a lot of friends. A lot of people were like pre-med, including like, I guess I wasn't really pre-med. I wanted more like to do the research kind of stuff. But I ended up like opting out of that. So during those 4 years, I was taking a lot of classes. I was having like the internships because I had heard like you need experience before you like leave college in order to like have a job. And so I was like working like on campus through like as a statistical advisor at some points. I was also like I found like an internship outside of school where I was working as like a Spanish interpreting like web developer like thing, just like translating strings really. At the time I was also like interested in like going into medicine but more for research, and so I was, to try to make myself like look good, I was doing a lot of like volunteering. And so I actually volunteered at this place called Community Health, where they needed like people to speak Spanish and like translate between the doctors and the patients. And that was a really like cool and humbling experience. A lot of the people that were there, they didn't have insurance. And so it was like you'd have like long like 9-month waits to get like seen like for like an eye exam and stuff like that. So it was just like, man, healthcare here, it's rough.
I feel like you got like a lot of different areas in your internship like span, from research to like web developer for translating Spanish content to that medical place. So how did you come across those internships? Was it through the school?
Well, through the research stuff, I needed that as like part of like to graduate so that I was able to get through school and like talking to different advisors. For that was really cool research looking at the effects of fetal alcohol syndrome, like basically alcohol, and using the zebrafish as a model and trying to see like, is there a way to like reverse like when there's like, fetal alcohol syndrome when like the fetus is like with like all this, alcohol, and like trying to see if we could like reverse some of those like effects. So that
Wow.
was really interesting research. But of course, like research is so long, and so I only got to like be there for like a little bit, which was just kind of like trying to test out, putting alcohol on some of these like zebrafish embryos. So that was like through school. And then the developer part, that one I found on Craigslist. And yeah, gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
And let's see what else.
Well, because typically, like schools put together career fairs, but if I remember, I never even went to those. I didn't
Mhm.
even know those were like happening half the time. I feel like there was, when you're like a first gen student, you kind of have this disconnect
Oh yeah.
from everything that is going on around the schools and all the opportunities and all the resources that you can actually like tap into and leverage. So that's where I was curious if you actually did like leverage,
Mhm.
some resources provided by the school, or if you found your own. And it sounds like it was a
Yeah.
mix.
It was mixed, but I would say definitely like finding my own, because I feel like it definitely resonates, like being a first gen. It's so hard. Like even like going back to like high school, it's like, oh, okay, we go and visit schools and we look at them and see if we like them. Okay, didn't know that was a thing. Oh, I need to
Yep.
like,
Yep.
extracurriculars. That makes you good for that. Okay, wait, scholarships. It was hard because like I couldn't really ask my parents for like help with homework because it was like in English, or,
Yeah.
and so it was like having to kind of do that on your own. And so like college is just like this one more overwhelming thing. I think I like what I had to learn was the skill of just like putting myself out there, and just like it's hard not knowing what you don't know and just trying your best to try to figure it
Yeah.
out. And so I feel like that's why I was able to get a lot of these like opportunities, because I just like would throw myself out there and kind of like ask the questions and see what's out there.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
skill in the end.
That's kind of what I did too when I was like transitioning jobs and like figuring it out, putting yourself out there. So that's definitely something that you have to kind of acquire, right? That skill.
Mhm.
Well, let's shift to your career. So you actually are a software engineer. So
Mhm.
what got you interested in software engineering from like being in in molecular biology and all in bioinformatics and everything else? Like, what prompted you kind of to check out software engineering?
Yeah, so as part of bioinformatics, that is using like computer science, so like using like building out programs to like read DNA sequences, and like just trying to like enhance, or like trying to facilitate things. And so that's kind of like where my first like taste into it was kind of like seeing like, oh, okay, like I could like build a little thing that can like translate RNA into DNA and whatnot. And so that's like where I got started, because like I didn't know what computer science was. Like I had heard of it in college at like one of the fairs or whatever, when they were explaining like all the different majors. I was like, oh, computer science, there's some kind of $6,000 grant. Okay, I guess I could look into like those kind of like, because I got to pay for school. So like, sure, let's double major in that. And so I think that was kind of like where I first had heard about it. But then when I was actually in the classes, I was not good at it. Like I
You
needed so
struggled.
much help. I actually didn't want to do any computer science. That's why I ended up going and getting like a master's in applied statistics, because I was like, numbers make more sense than code does, because like code I don't understand. And so
Yeah.
it's I didn't see myself as being a software engineer.
Hmm.
So yeah.
And you did mention to me before that you had taken a Python class, right? That
Yes.
kind of changed your perspective into software engineering.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was like I had graduated, and I was like, I hate computer science. This is dumb. And then I was like, all right, well maybe I could just try it and like see, And so I took like a class by this like through Coursera. It's like this guy named Dr. Charles Severance, and it's so funny. In like one of his intro videos, he was like explaining how he like loves teaching. He had like a little sleeve that had like Coursera, like he had like tattoos of like these like learning platforms like Blackboard and Sakai. So I was like, this guy's dope. And he just like was able to break things down into a way that I was like, oh wow, that clicks, that connects, like, and I think it also helped that it was Python and not like Java, which was like my first programming language in school. And I was like, this is dumb. But Python was not dumb in my head. So, yeah.
I love that. And so tell me, I also know that you were very involved in like volunteering in the community, like, doing
Yeah.
nonprofit work. Can you share some of those experiences that you did, where you leveraged kind of like your data background and whatnot?
Yeah. So I was a consultant at the time and had Tableau on my computer, like my work computer. And I had joined a couple of groups like On Call Scientists and Statistics Without Borders, which is a group within the American Statistical Association. And I had seen that they would send out emails of like, hey, who can like help and work on this? And so there was a couple that were like, hey, we need some like data visualization stuff. And so, that's like when I started volunteering, like back in like 2014 to like 2015, 2016, like earlier years. So I did some visualizations about the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. And then eventually did the visualization for the Nepal earthquake, and that actually got published, which was really cool. And just after a while, I became the person that within the group, I was like their data visualization like lead. So they would
It's
hit me
cool.
up personally, yeah, and be like,
Yeah.
hey, we have this group, they need help with this, go for it.
That's awesome. I mean, what an opportunity to get published and work on something that like really matters, as opposed to like, I don't know. I'm sure that was fulfilling for you.
Oh yeah, it was super fulfilling. And that like led to like so many other like opportunities of
I
like,
can imagine,
hey,
yeah.
like they need help with this, they need help with that, right? After a while, a couple of things that were data visualization related, but it was also like, hey, is there anyone that can help like get data in a good state for like, working with it? And so one group I worked with was like doing the Myanmar like budget analysis. And so what they had is they had an Excel sheet that they got this like in this exact same format every month. And what they needed to do was kind of put this into a dashboard. And so there had been somebody who was working on that dashboard, but there was no one who was working on the actual like manipulating the data so that it could be put into this dashboard format. And so that's like
Hmm.
where I had just finished my Python class, and I was like, well, I could try and like let's see what happens. Like it seems like this is like a cool opportunity. I could try to figure it out, and I also had like friends who were software engineers, so like in case I was doing it wrong, I could always like ask
Hmm.
for help. And so I ended up doing that. And that was such a fulfilling thing because they were, like I remember I got like shout outs on LinkedIn and like, I had like, it was just like nice to be recognized. But more important, it was like really amazing to feel useful and like
Yeah.
helping others not have to deal with tedious work and just like I have an opportunity to like automate things and like make it better for other people. So like that was like I think like after volunteering so much throughout like my life, that's like where it like boiled down to is like I really like this kind of stuff. Like I want
Yeah.
to feel like I can empower other people to like, not have to deal with like more like the tedious stuff and really focus on like the stuff that's important that they like specialize in,
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. And I mean, I'm sure all of those experiences like helped you shape your career pathway, right? Because people are looking at that stuff in your resume, in your LinkedIn. So I'm sure like that's really it was just more than anything like enriching for you as well to kind of like land that
Mhm.
first opportunity. So speaking of first opportunities, or at least first times, I think we might have overlapped at Innova
Mhm.
when you, because I saw in your LinkedIn that that was your first, or at least your first corporate setting. Is that right, or
Yeah.
did you have another corporate before?
I would say that was the first. Well, that was so. Let's see. I was a consultant first for like a small, like 20-person, company, and then after. I had like done all this this volunteer work. I then started trying to apply to jobs, and then I got a job as a software engineer, but like I wasn't supported there and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
And so that didn't work out. And then it's when I was like, okay, well, I guess maybe software engineering isn't the thing I should do. And so I went to Innova as a data analyst.
Yeah, I saw that you were doing more data engineer work, data engineering work, 16. But anyway, we're not here to speak about that. We're here to speak about your career.
Yeah.
So now as you join like your first corporate setting, what goes through your mind really, like as you talked a little bit about it, how you weren't supported, like how you were having some difficult times at other settings. So like what did you learn during those difficult, challenging times that you weren't being supported?
Yeah, I learned that like, so before I was in this mindset of like, I want to be at a startup because that's like where all the cool software engineers go and whatever. But what they don't tell you, I mean, I guess maybe they do tell you about it, and I just wasn't listening, was like it's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of like, not necessarily being respected and just like a lot of boundaries being crossed. And so I learned that like when I went to this like big corporation like Innova, it was a complete, 180. Like it wasn't that. It was like everything like moves way slower. There's just like way more, I guess, like checks and balances. And so that was like I think what I needed at that time, because I had not gotten that kind of stuff at like the startup I had first worked at. And it was also really nice to have like a woman manager. So it was just like really nice to kind of like be in a place where I was supported, where deadlines and like expectations were clear, and that there were other people who like weren't drowning and could help you out. So like I learned that like support is like a big thing I want in a company or like anywhere that I work.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I agree. I feel like that's like a common problem everywhere. Like with organizations not really putting or making an effort to make sure that their employees are taken care of or are getting the support that they need. I think they're just so focused on like building, making money, like rather than really like supporting their people. And that's unfortunate. I feel like in my last 6 years in my career, in tech, I feel like I've seen that happen often. And in particular, like two employees are leaving their managers, really, like
Yeah.
because it's not always healthy in these places. So
No, definitely not.
but you transitioned back to software engineering after becoming a data analyst at Innova, right? So and then you've been consistently working as a software engineer since then. So normally what do you do to prepare for interviews? What do you do to prepare for, that next step? How do you know when you're ready to take the next step?
How do I know when I'm ready to take the next step is when I feel like the current step I'm on is not doing it for me anymore. Like I'm not getting like my needs met. And that's like really like when I'm like, all right, I need to go. When I check in with my mental health and it's like, oh, it's not doing so well. It's like, yeah, it's probably like a symptom of work. So that's kind of how I've known. And then like how I prepare from going to the next step is really just like I make a spreadsheet, and I kind of like put like what's the mission of the company there. Like I'm comparing all of these across like all the places that I'm applying for. So I'm like comparing what's the mission, what the like vibe and expectations, like if it's more on the ambiguous side or if it's more on the like we have like structure. I also always ask like about what the diversity, equity and inclusion is like, and also in my interviews I always ask like how do you support people in terms of like preparing for like interviews. See like what the like after I get a feel for like what kind of work it's going to be, I then just kind of do some touches of like, okay, so if we're going to do Rails, I'm going to like brush up on Rails, and maybe I'll go through like a tutorial or something of like to try to build something so that it's like fresh in my mind. But otherwise I'm not necessarily doing like any kind of like algorithm stuff. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is kind of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't see how like me building, like me being able to explain like how I can like create a tic-tac-toe, game is going to be helpful when
Yeah.
it's like, am I going to be, is that what I'm going to be doing? Because then that would be helpful. But if it's like, am I able to like take an ambiguous problem and have conversations with stakeholders and then like actually build off of what their needs are? Like I think that's more important. Like having more of realistic, you know, kind of job interviews, I think is like more useful than like, are you smart enough? Like, how many
Yeah.
trees would it take to like cover the whole world? Well, like, no.
Yeah,
So
no, I get that, and I mean, it sounds like you really do your like due diligence on this on whatever opportunity you're looking at. I think I find that I admire that. I think that it takes a lot of courage to do that, and it's and you're also doing some self work on yourself. Like you're looking to
mhm.
review things, freshen up on things. Your continuous learning is like top of mind. So that's awesome. That's also something that I like to do too, especially when it comes to the DI.
Yeah.
I'm very, very picky about that. I feel like we all know the
Mhm.
true state of how DI works, and either you're doing it or you're not doing it right.
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I will, like, one of my questions is, do you have like a group? Because I, I mean, I'm going to be selfish and I'm not going to be a part of the person who will start it, because then that means there's going to be so much work and it might not be set up for success. And like, I don't think that's going to be good for me. Like, I need to feel like I'm at a company where it is already been a priority and I can just add to it, not like
yeah,
start. So
yeah,
yeah, I feel like,
and sorry, no, you're 100% right, because that happened to me. I was
yeah.
that person that helped build that community at Innova, the ERGs, the diverse, like the DI, how to think about it, and in the end, I ended up losing. So
Yeah.
I wasn't supported. It didn't work out. Like I had to leave that place.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the
but
sad truth. Like
yeah,
that's what it, I feel like the things I've learned is because they've been learned the hard way. you know? And it's like, yeah, like now I definitely, I used to be like, I will take any opportunity for like to be a software engineer. And now I'm like,
hmm,
no, I'm at a point where I feel like I have like the privilege to say yes or no to
yeah,
jobs, you know? Cause like, yeah,
yeah,
it's bitten me before where it's like I end up being the first like, diversity person, which then feels very tokenizing, only to then not be
hmm,
supported and then be like, "Oh, well, we were just so excited that you were, not a man or not white or whatever." And they don't tell me this, but they'll tell like other people this, or like you can kind of read between the lines. And so it's like, yeah,
yeah.
I'm not going to put myself through that
I
again.
mean, not gonna lie, you can go to like built in what like Chicago, all the startup pages, and you can see all the people in the photographs are people of
Mhm.
color. The majority of
Mhm.
them are people of color or women.
Hmm.
When that's not truly reflective of the community inside the company at all. So definitely very misleading. And I think, yeah, companies should do better. But hey,
Yeah.
but anyway, so you continue your path in software engineering, and you also became an adjunct professor, right, at
Oh
DePaul.
yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did that for like a quick minute, but it quickly went away after the pandemic. But yeah, it was. I don't even know how it happened. I think it was like a community like email or whatever, like in the Python community was like, hey, like there's like people like DePaul is looking for um like professors just to teach a class, and I just applied and I was like, okay, like I'll do it. And so my interview was basically teach a class and they really liked it. And so I ended up like becoming an adjunct professor for students in particular, like in this program for international students who were trying to get their masters. It was different, because like there was like some language barrier sometimes, and like trying to figure out like how can I, make this as accessible as possible, and like and that was hard. But yeah, it was a very humbling experience. It was like, oh, I don't know. It was different. And I only got to do it for like a little bit because then COVID happened. And I was like,
so, I mean, is it okay? Can we talk about your work or no? Like your company? Yeah. I mean, I see that, I know you for a while. So I know that you work at Reverb. Yes. And from what you've just shared about doing your due diligence, I'm excited to hear a little bit about them. Like what does your day-to-day look like? What do you do there?
I'm a software engineer. I've been there for almost 4 years, coming up in May, it's been a while. So next year I'll get a sabbatical or something. Awesome. Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah. And so what the way that I started there, it was I would do transactions. Like I was on the transactions team. So I would help, like trying to make it easier for the sellers, to get their money. Cause like that was their business and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was working on that. After a while of doing anything that was like, where's my money questions, I transitioned to another team called seller growth, where it was like trying to facilitate seller interactions, trying to make things easier for them, trying to make things better, like, updating the pages that they use to like work for them instead of against them, and like listening to what they wanted. And now I just got added to this team, which is more of like an internal tools team where I help the customer service folks and try to make their lives easier. So now I'm actually like working on the things that I like. So like trying to, have it so that they work on less tedious stuff that can just be automated and work on like more impactful things for them. So that's
better internal features, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
When I first transitioned to tech at Groupon, I was part of the customer service team. So we actually got to send a lot of feedback to the engineers and the product managers and all to like fix this thing or this thing is not working. So I can empathize with that. But that's exciting. Well, I want to shift to just like your future aspirations and like maybe sharing some advice for people that are listening. So for anyone that basically has faced or is facing similar challenges that you have gone through or you've shared today, what advice would you share about either breaking into tech, about continuous learning, difficult times, at their workplace? Like what can you share based on your experiences?
I think definitely find your community in terms of like when things are hard. I think like that's like who you need to rely on, but also not in an overwhelming way. So also get a therapist if you don't have one already. Yes. Don't want to trauma dump. Not too much anyways.
My therapist and I are going into 3 years, so
yeah, exactly. So I think that's been really helpful. One of the jobs that I had, it was particularly difficult because we had the CTO who was just doing a lot of like inappropriate things. Like you could see like some sexism and like racism kind of things. And so for that, it was good and bad that like most of us, like I think like 7 of us, we all quit one summer because we were like, we can't deal with this anymore. And so we had like that kind of community, but then it was also like bad because we were all experiencing this like, trauma. And so for that, it was like really nice to talk to them and just kind of like, I don't know, like just say like, hey, today like stunk, or, oh, I was like I got triggered today or whatever. So I think one is just like having community and people that you trust to talk to. I think in terms of like trying to find jobs too, I've been really fortunate that I've like made a tech community specifically. So like I can like, ask around and kind of see like, hey, what do people like look for? Like I have friends that are, engineering managers, and I can say like, what do you like look for? Like if I were to like interview, like, what do I need? And so like, it's been nice to kind of have that like insider like view because I have friends who are in these positions or even just like software engineers in other places like they can kind of say like what they're looking for. And then I can kind of like create goals for myself, like, okay, maybe I need to like be more strong in front end engineering so that I can be more like considered more full stack and like try to apply to those positions. So I think just like having community is like a big thing. For me, I know like what's helpful for me is always like I learn by doing, and that's why I am a person who will look at tutorials. I will also challenge myself by like joining different volunteer groups that I find. So I think that's how I've done it.
Yeah.
It might not work for everyone, but if you're in that position where you have a job and you can, you know, you have the mental energy capacity to also do that other stuff, that works.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, you just reminded me of something that I want to talk about that I saw in one of your notes to me one day. So you talked about how you were feeling guilty from your
Oh
success,
yeah.
and that you do feel pride, but at the same time you also feel guilt because it's like literally like starting from the bottom that we're here
Yeah, that's what it is.
mentality, and like, but I feel like that's very common, I think, among women. And well, not, maybe not just women, I think maybe minorities, but I feel like I also feel that guilt sometimes of, my parents had to work awful jobs for me to be here.
Yeah.
But I think I try to shift that mentality to saying, exactly, like my parents had to do all of these sacrifices so that we didn't have to. And now we're just like enjoying that experience that they were able to gift us.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't feel super guilty.
I know. It's just like so hard because it was like, I came from, okay, one parent would work first shift, the other parent would work second shift. And then for like 2 hours, I had to make sure that I didn't open the door because child services might take us away because that's not like legal, And so it was like that. And then like now I like work and I have a good job and I've been able to afford a lot of things. But like that's literally what they came here for. They
Yeah.
came to the States to try to build a better life for their children. That is happening. But it also feels like weird,
But
that like
see, you also have given back so much. You have
that's
volunteered so much. You have like done your work. Like, you are not just like sitting here enjoying and being mean to people. Like
that's true.
you're putting in all the work too. And like I know that at one point you mentioned before to me that, from being on WIC to like to
Yeah.
having free lunches, all that. Like we now pay for unemployment benefits. We have
Mhm.
paid taxes for all these things. So like we're also giving back, even if we don't think about it because it's coming out of our paychecks, but it's happening. We're
That's
contributing to this fund that maybe we'll use again one day if we get laid off and we don't have a job. So I was like, I need to make sure I mention those things to her so
yeah.
that she can start thinking differently.
I know. I think it's also part of just growing up like Latino Catholic and
Growing
there's
up
like
Latina, yeah.
well that, but also like Catholic and it's like sin this and that, like guilt this,
For
guilt that.
sure, for
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
for sure. Definitely agree with that. But
hmm
anyway, well, let's go for the last question. What does your future look like? What are your career aspirations?
Yeah. So, um, me being a recovering type A personality, I'm getting a degree in sustainability because why not? It's been something that like has been on my mind. I really feel like I think in general I've always kind of felt these like call to actions to like make changes, and that's why I volunteer so much. And now I'm like ready to just like, all right, let's go sustainability. And so the I had struggled a lot with like, okay, I've built my career up so much. I don't want it to go away. I've gotten used to things, like 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 to be honest, the money. Like I've gotten used to like just like a certain standard of living, and I'm not like trying to like, make it go away. And I've worked so hard to get here.
Yeah.
But then through talking to people, talking to like different sustainability folks, I found that there is a way to marry both sustainability and being in tech, and it's called digital sustainability. So that's like trying to, it's very like new. There's not like a lot of information out there for it, but that's kind of like where I'm trying to get to. And so, and that's just like like trying to make it so that like, websites have a smaller carbon footprint. And so I think that that's going to be something that's like going to be taking off soon. I think it's like started already, but just kind of like that's kind of where I'm going to try to do both, like sustainability and software engineering, and just kind of continue on. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be like some chief sustainability officer or something.
Yeah. Well, and also you mentioned when we were on our bike ride a few months ago that you wanted to potentially look into like angel investing too, like looking at sustainability companies and whatnot. So is that still kind of like in your dream pipeline?
Yeah. I think I definitely want to do that. And that's kind of why I was like, okay, I'm going to get this degree and kind of like understand a little bit more of like what I don't know. Part of the degree will have like, like economics and policy kind of classes and like just like different business classes. So I think that'll be good. And yeah, I definitely want to be able to like put my money like where my mouth is, like in those kinds of bigger like spaces. And that's something that like has also just like followed me throughout, because I've even like started like before the pandemic, I started like a scholarship at like my old high school, where because I got like scholarships from there. I made a scholarship and I called it the Pitch Please like scholarship.
I love
so silly.
that.
Yeah.
Do you do it every year?
I was doing it, and then the pandemic happened, and then I kind of just stopped. So, and at that point, also, I had like lost my job during the pandemic, and I was like, I can't afford anything but myself right now. So,
no, that's
taking a break. But I would love to get back into being able to like fund, scholarships, angel investments, like just kind of maybe reduce that guilt of like me being here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a pleasure. It was so fun chatting with you. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.
All right, sounds
good. See ya.
All right, see ya.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Chicago Techies podcast. If you enjoy listening, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. Let's continue the conversation on social media. We are at Chicago Techies on all social media platforms. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week.